Welcome to the Forensic Financialist, where we simplify business and leadership challenges and choose the road that leads to wisdom and excellence. We discuss tough issues facing business and figure out easy-to-implement solutions. Using the rearview mirror approach, we look in the rear view to move towards a brighter future. Here's your host, Jeff Newkirk.
Welcome to the Forensic Financialist. I'm your host, Jeff Newkirk. This is the 24th episode of the Forensic Financialist, and it is the final episode of this podcast. Now, I gotta say, I have loved every minute of making this podcast, and what a great experience it's been. Thinking back to when I started, I didn't know what to expect. Never done a podcast before, and I've loved it. I've met some great people, learned a lot, and most importantly, I hope that I've achieved my goal. And if you remember, my goals, I want my listeners to get one nugget, at least one takeaway from each podcast, and to get a little inspired. So I hope I've met those goals, and I hope that I've reached some people, that it's been meaningful to you. So in this final episode, I want to reflect back on some of the best parts of the Forensic Financialist. And thinking back to some of the interviews, like the early on, Mike Michalowicz. Now here is a best-selling author. Has written tons of books, Profit First, Pumping Plan, Clockwork, Fix This Next, and he's talking to me on the Forensic Financialist. And I got to say, I was a little nervous. I wanted to do the very best that I could, and I wanted Mike Michalowicz to go away thinking, okay, well, that was a good experience. I'm glad that I did that interview. And, that we learned something from Mike in that interview, and that was how to address our business during this pandemic, these crazy, crazy times. So he was gracious, he was informative, and I'm just so thankful that he was willing to participate. And another best-selling author that I had an opportunity to interview on the Forensic Financialist was Dory Clark. Here's Dory Clark again, all kinds of books out there, Reinventing Yourself, Stand Out, a super important book if you want to build awareness for your business, for yourself, coming up with that breakthrough idea. Well, Stand Out is for you. And here's Dory Clark talking to me on the Forensic Financialist. And it was an awesome interview. I mean, we had a great time. She was just a lot of fun and so genuine, so authentic. I mean, if I were to email Dory Clark right now, I know that she'd respond. And she probably gets like 10,000 emails a day. But she just is always working, and she just wants to help others to be successful and to improve themselves. And again, I'm so thankful to her for taking the time to talk to me on the Forensic Financialist. And so many other great interviews. I think of Stacey Harris, owner of 5 franchises of Network in Action, talking about being the matchmaker for business owners and how important it is for us to network, that we need to get out there. We can't stay in our office and not meet people. And if we want to be successful business owners, we got to get out. We got to meet people. And, that was a great interview. She talked about some challenges that she had early in her career to get where she is today as a very successful entrepreneur herself. So I'm so grateful to Stacey for taking the time. That was an awesome episode. Other great interviews. Rob Smith, he, sales expert, talked to us about how do we pivot. I can't believe I just used that word. That is the most overused word of our time right now, pivot. But he taught us how to pivot our sales approach in this pandemic. We have to be comfortable with Zoom calls. We have to be comfortable giving presentations virtually. And when we're selling a product, selling a service, we better get comfortable with selling virtually. And Rob was talking about how important it is to be able to present virtually, to be able to communicate critical information virtually. So whether we like it or not, the Zoom thing it's going to be here for a while. My guess is that in some cases it'll be here forever. We're probably not going to travel and go to clients as much as we used to. So we need to be comfortable with the virtual thing. It's just the way it is. And so Rob was telling us, you better get good at the virtual approach to selling. That was so helpful, so helpful. And I think back to some of the inspirational interviews. Mr. Andrew Trudell, oh my goodness, what he has overcome in his life as a survivor of traumatic brain injury. Oh my goodness. He went from, a big wig position in a well-known accounting firm and just killing it professionally. And went out one morning, was training for, I think it was a triathlon, and was hit by a truck, and his life changed in a moment. And to see him today and to hear his faith and what he wants to do with his life now, I mean, that just stops you in your tracks. You have no idea how grateful. I mean, we need to be so thankful for what we have every single day, because we have no idea what other people are going through. We just don't. And when I was talking to Andrew Trudell, and he was telling me all of the challenges that he has had in recovering and from this traumatic brain injury and going on with his life, and that he wants to be an inspiration for others, man, that's huge. Think about going to the grocery store, for example, and it's like you're going to the grocery store for the first time every time, because you can't remember what you want to buy, where it's located in the grocery store. You always have to ask, you always have to have like a map of the grocery store so you know where to find stuff, because it's like going there for the first time every time. So again, we got to be thankful. We got to be grateful for every single thing we have, because we have no idea what other people are going through. And we need to be compassionate, right? I mean, I talk about all the time, serve others, not yourself, serve others. And part of it is understanding that there are people in need. There are people that are really hurting in ways that we have no idea. So have that mindset of serving others. It's not about you, right? It's never about you. It's about what you're going to do for everyone else. What an inspiration Andrew Trudell is. And I can't wait to talk to him again on a future podcast somewhere down the road. Other awesome interviews I think of just recently with Tony Harris Taylor. Man, overcoming some great challenges in her life and having lost 90 pounds, not once, but twice. Man, whew, that is some determination. And the obstacles that she's overcome. And she has this mantra called drastic. Why? Because everything she does is drastic. Losing 90 pounds, that's pretty drastic. Losing it twice, I don't know if that, it's super drastic. And she's a successful franchise owner of a Network in Action as well. And she has a successful business, drastic results. So, that was a great interview, very inspirational. I'm thankful to Tony for taking the time to talk to me on the Forensic Financialist. That was truly, truly awesome. In another recent interview, Mackenzie Childs talking about cognitive behavior. And I knew at the beginning of that interview that I was going to get smarter by the end of the interview. And I did. I learned about cognitive behavior, what it means, how do we need to deal with some of our issues, our problems, and how can we best go about that. Very informative. I'm so grateful to Mackenzie for taking time to talk to me on the Forensic Financialist. I think that we all got smarter in that interview. And I think of, all the different inspirational stories that came across in the Forensic Financialist, and thinking back to some of the experiences that my dad had, growing up and his business, and he was always somebody that I really admired. He passed away in November of 2018, and I had the privilege to take care of him for a number of years, and I learned so much. We had great quality times together. There were some tough days. It was in the most challenging years of his life, especially the last couple, really, really challenging. But, he taught me a lot. He taught me so much growing up. He taught me about business. And, for example, one of the things so many stories that I'll never forget with my dad, but, one was his ability to touch people, to connect with people. And, he was in a very powerful position, I guess, if you will. He was a CEO, and he had to make critical decisions. And but he always took time to talk to people. And every time I went into work, with him, like on a Saturday morning or something when I was little, and we'd walk through the halls, he would always stop and talk to people. He was never aloof, right? He was always there for everyone else. And that came across. So, when he walked down the hall, he'd say like, hey, Sarah, how you doing? And he wouldn't stop at that. He'd be like, Sarah, hey, didn't your daughter just get married? Oh, how was that? And so he and Sarah would talk for a bit. And then he'd walk down the hall and say hello to George. And, George, how was your son's graduation? And, and so he was just that kind of a guy, right? And people could really, resonate and with that, and wanted him to talk, wanted him to stop by. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, here comes the boss. It was like, hey, there's Harlan Newkirk. Let's talk to him. I wonder what he has to say today. And I just was always so impressed by that. And one of the things he told me, because I asked him like later on when I got older, how do you remember everybody's name? Because that's crazy. You can remember everybody's name and stuff about them. He said, well, every time I meet somebody new, I say their name to myself 3 times. 3 times. So I'll be darned if I don't do the same thing. And, more times than not, it works. I can't say that I'm perfect at it, but when I meet somebody for the first time, I always repeat their name 3 times to myself. And if there's a time that I forget to do that, it's like 100% that I'm not going to remember their name. But when I do repeat their name to myself at least 3 times, I'm going to remember their name. That was just one example of how my dad helped me in my life and with my relationship with others, and helped me in business. It's important that we know people's names. It just helps the communication for sure. So thinking through some of the past episodes and my goal of, I hope you got at least one thing out of every episode. And Thinking back to when I described the 13 absolutes of leadership and how important it is to be strong leaders. We don't have enough strong leaders today. I love talking about leadership. As a finance guy, my thing is I can stare at a spreadsheet all day long, but there's always a story behind the numbers. And that story is what makes the outcome, what develops the outcome. But the leadership that is so important helps to improve the story. And then the end result is going to be, ultimately a better bottom line. But we are going to improve the lives of others from being a strong leader. It's so important to take on the qualities and characteristics, and I call them absolutes, of being a strong leader. And I think there are 13. There are 13 absolutes of leadership. And I just love talking about leadership. It's so important. So, what are the 13 absolutes? Well, quickly, I think number one is good heart. We've got to have a good heart. What does that mean? That means that we're always trying to do the right thing. We have integrity. Our moral compass is pointed in the right direction, and we try not to ever compromise that. We've got a good heart. Energetic. We've got to be energetic to be strong leaders. And how do we do that? How do we stay energized physically and mentally? Well, we take care of ourselves. We take care of ourselves. I'll first one to admit I'm a little weak in that category. I'm trying to improve, but I got to take better care of myself physically. So my energy level is high all the time. Perseverance. We have to be, we have to persevere. We have to be determined in order to improve. And in order to improve the lives of others, it is easy to not make a decision. It's easy to put your head in the sand and see life go by. But what are you doing? You're making a decision not to make a decision, not to take action. And so I think of Grant Cardone and his 10X. We got a 10 exit. We got to have to always take action, make it happen. And I love that. I love that. I mean, we have to not just embrace the day, we have to attack the day. And when we attack the day, well, first of all, if we don't, the day's going to attack us back. So we have to be ready. We have to be determined. We have to make the decisions. If we don't, we're just putting our head in the sand. And that is not a strong leader. Courage. We have to have courage. We can't be afraid. We have to be able to fight that fear. Fear, what does fear stand for? Forget ever achieving results. Think about that. If you're fearful, you will never achieve results. It's not going to happen. I've had plenty of fear in my life, lots of fear. And when I have fear, I'm not achieving. So you got to put that fear aside. Put the fear aside. Because if you have fear, forget ever achieving results. Have courage. Positive attitude. We have to remain positive all the time. That's hard. That is a tough one. Some of us don't wake up in the morning with, unicorns and rainbows. But when we're positive, life is so much better. Have that gratitude journal. Put a reminder on your phone to say thanks during the day. It's hard to be negative when you have a grateful heart. Being a good communicator, I talked about my dad and how he can communicate with all kinds of different people, being genuine and authentic. Of course, serving others. The eighth one is being disciplined. I think of so many leaders that are just undisciplined. They completely lose it when things get stressful. Well, how can you inspire others? How are people going to follow you when you just lose your discipline? So we have to be disciplined. Remain humble. That's important. So important. Being visionary, continuously learning, and have that faith. Be grounded in faith. Remember, we're not in this by ourselves. I'm a person of faith. I'm a Christian, but I do think that even whatever you believe in a higher power. It's going to help keep you grounded. It's going to help you stay accountable. And then 13, high emotional intelligence. And I love this saying. I use it all the time. Emotion high, logic low. Because when we're emotional, it's really hard for us to make decisions in a logical manner. In fact, science has proven it. I mean, when you're all emotional, you can't think about a situation logically. Your brain just doesn't go there. So we have to have that emotional intelligence to keep things in check, keep our emotions in check, so we can properly and effectively communicate and make good decisions. It just makes life so much better. And strong leaders have that high emotional intelligence. So I also talked about core values, those non-negotiable things, those lines in the sand that we all need to have, that you need to live by. And what are they? Well, only you know what they are. And a core value, that's something that you are going to live by. That's how you make decisions. That's how you live your life. So, I always say, if you have to think about it for a long time, that's not a core value. Core value are those things that you can just rattle them off your tongue. They come naturally. And it's whether you do it perfectly or not, that's beside the point, but it's what you want to live by and aspire to. So, for example, one of my core values is faith. Well, am I perfect in my faith? No, hardly, but I'm trying. So I aspire to be faithful all the time. Accountability. I'd like to say that I'm accountable 100% of the time, but, there's probably a time or two that I'm not. I inadvertently make mistakes or something falls through the cracks. So it's those non-negotiable things, those lines in the sand, if you will. So as I wrap up the Forensic Financialist, I want to just say thanks. Thank you to all the listeners that took time out of their day to check out my podcast, to give me a review, to subscribe to it. I've loved it, man. I've really had a great time with it. And I want to know, from your perspective, from the listener's perspective, should I do this again? I mean, I want to, but I want to I'll move forward with it if people think that it's going to be meaningful. So just shoot me an email. Just let me know, Jeff@understandablesolutions.com. Just say, yes, it was great. Keep going. No, it sucked. Don't do it again. Whatever. I want some feedback. Tell me what you would recommend, whether I should continue on with a podcast. And if you think I should, well, what was it about this podcast that was so meaningful to you? Tell me what it is so I can do it again, because I want to provide the very best for my listeners. That's what it's all about. It's what it's all about. It's not about me. It's about what I can do for everyone else. So thank you. Thank you for checking out the Forensic Financialist. So I'm going to wrap up, and I'm sure that somewhere down the road, you're going to hear from Jeff Newkirk again. I just had that feeling, but give me feedback. Give me some feedback. And as I always say, I hope you had a great day, and I hope tomorrow is even better. Peace, everyone.
You've been listening to The Forensic Financialist, where we simplify business and leadership challenges and choose the road that leads to wisdom and excellence. To learn more about Jeff, visit his website at understandablesolutions.com or email Jeff at jeff@understandablesolutions.com. Mentioning this podcast will get you a complimentary discovery session with Jeff. Until next time.